Hello and welcome back to the Paragon Games Ruby Open. My name's Kanishka Kurunratne. I'm joined in the booth here by Jacob Golding.
Hi everyone.
How you doing, Jacob?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Pretty cool. Alright, so we've got our players ready to go here. They haven't resolved their mulligans and they're just waiting for the okay from us. So what can you tell us about the deck these guys?
Yeah, so we've got some interesting decks here. Both players are taking something that isn't necessarily tier 1, but is, you know, these decks both look quite interesting. So JP on the right hand side of your screen is playing an Esper Midrange deck. So it's basically playing the blue-white flyers shell. You know, we've got Spellcaller, we've got Reflector Mage going on there, some Selfless Spirits in there, Thraben Inspector. But it's also playing black for 3 Scrap Heaps Scavenger. And 3 Shambling Vents, which is quite interesting. So tell me that JP kind of wants a bit more resilience going into the late game. He's also playing 4 Gideon main, which is something that we normally find in the sideboard of these decks. So I think he's looking to have the ability to interact that the blue-white flyers deck has with Selfless Spirit and Reflector Mage and Spellcaller, but also wants some of that late game staying power.
Cards like Gideon and some Shambling Vents give you.
Yeah. We've also got Vance on the left of your screen, and he's playing Red-Green Energy, which is a different deck to what we saw Laura playing in round 2. She was playing Red-Green Pummeler. Vance has taken out the combo.
Basically, yep.
Yeah. So he's looking to just attack with these efficiently costed creatures, getting a bunch of energy. So he's playing things like Lantho-Hellion main, he's playing Bristling Hydra, he's also playing a top end of 1 Sky Sovereign, 2 Chandras as well, and he's also playing 3 copies of Tireless Tracker, which is something that we saw a lot of in the previous format, often seen alongside Reflector Mage in Collected Company builds, but it's a very powerful creature that fits well into basically any type of shell of deck that you're looking to build on. It's fine as an aggressive card, it can get quite big in the late game, and it's also quite good in control decks, allowing you to just continue generating card advantage from your land drops and then have a win condition in the late game. Yeah. So Andrew's taken the combo deck, really, of Red-Green Pummeler, and he's slowed it down a bit, and this is kind of what we see the Pummeler deck doing quite often after sideboarding as well, is trimming down on the combo if their opponent's got too much removal or stuff to fight through. He's just decided that against the current field, he wants to make that the game plan, the first off game plan.
Yeah, and pretty good answer to Gideon there. Of course, we're already seeing some of those sort of powerhouse cards in JP's deck. And just as a note, that card on the battlefield with the counter on it is not actually an invention, it is representing energy counters.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't like it quite as much as what we've seen some other players using, which is the Pokemon Electric Energy, which is the objectively correct way of representing energy on the battlefield. Yeah, here we've got JP his draw. He's going to take a bit of a think how he's going to develop his board now that Gideon has been taken care of.
And there's 2 pretty formidable threats on the board here as well.
Yeah.
Both of these are capable of dealing a lot of damage very quickly.
Yeah, so the Long Toss Cub kind of runs away with advantage, and the getting energy, getting bigger, becoming harder to block, getting more energy, and so on and so forth.
How worried do you think JP will actually be about that Cub?
I think he's probably not going to be too worried about it if he has a Reflector Mage in hand.
Okay.
Because Reflector Mage, obviously a very easy way of dealing with that, especially if Andrew goes kind of all in, spends a bunch of energy, and uses a bunch of resources on it, then JP can undo all of that hard work by just playing a Reflector Mage.
Oh, wow.
Here we've got a Sky Sovereign coming down. He's going to take care of that Selfless Spirit.
Yeah, which is a pretty powerful card. I think less important in a matchup like this, where the players are just where there's much more creature combat going on, when people are trying to like blow you out with the removal spell. The spirit can be much stronger. But...
So the spirit, here. JP is going to flash in a spell queller and then sacrifice this selfless spirit. So that's going to let him block.
Indestructible.
Yeah, he's going to let him block whatever Andrew is playing. He knows that Andrew isn't going to be playing anything else this turn because he's tapped out. And JP values getting the spell queller on the battlefield more.
Oh, and it looks like he does spend the energy on the attack there. Okay. So it gets to trample through appointed damage. So so that play to me, it signifies that JP recognizes that Andrew is representing a lot of damage. The only real reason to do that there and not get value off the Enter the Battlefield trigger, I imagine, is to soak up 3 damage. Yeah,
well, so he prevented in total 5 damage because it kept the Long Toss card back as well.
True. Yep.
And yeah, now Andrew may not have attacked. He may have left the Sky Sovereign and the Long Toss card back on blocks. And we see here, JP, even though his threats have got flying, he's going to decide to hang back because that Sky Sovereign can very easily deal with those if he decides to get a bit too aggressive.
And so I've got a hunch. I've seen plays pass the turn with 5 mana up in the past. Does this mean what I think it means?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Probably about 80% to meaning what you're alluding to, which is going to be Avacyn. For anybody trying to get into the current standard format, this is something that you really have to be aware of. You need to know that it exists, and you need to understand what that means. What it means is that you really can't just do things into 5 open mana. Andrew's found some good things to do regardless of that, and he's going to stick and Chandra.
Okay, so it looks like he's just cast that and he's going to be passing the turn.
Yeah, so here we see.
So here's a card that we actually hasn't
Avacyn.
made too much. It happened. I was right, wasn't I?
Yeah.
Okay. I feel good about that. Okay.
Yeah, so
there is Chandra. So he's chosen to
-3. I presume targeting the Knight ally.
Oh, perhaps the Copter that got crewed.
Oh yes.
And I think that's what the Avacyn flashed in response to.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. I forgot that the Copter had been crewed, but yeah. So Chandra got a lot of talk when it was spoiled.
Yeah, it was 4 abilities, right?
And they're 4 decent abilities. They're
good,
not bad abilities. You've got a mode that can protect her. You've got a mode that generates card advantage. It's really kind of talking about the theory of good planeswalkers. It's got everything. It just doesn't seem to have lined up very well against the format.
Yeah.
The format's got a lot of flyers that can pack a punch.
Yep, and things that just dodge removal can come in at instant speed and just take it out immediately. On the other hand, we just saw another 4-mana planeswalker that definitely has made splashes.
Yeah. He's been around a bit longer though.
Yep. Now it looks like we've JP's just decided to emblem here.
Yeah.
He's getting in with Avacyn as a 5/5.
Yeah. So this really is good. It lets JP kind of fight through that Sky Sovereign, which had he not made the Gideon album, then that Sky Sovereign just sits there. Yeah, it either mows the board down or it sits there and stops the game from progressing from JP's side. And he really can't let that happen with Andrew having a Chandra in play. So making this trade means that the Chandra, JP, if he wants to, can get rid of Chandra next turn.
Yeah.
Assuming no responses from Andrew.
So yeah, already seeing how different this deck plays out compared to the one we saw Laura playing earlier. I mean, he's sitting there drawing cards with a Planeswalker.
Yep.
And just building his board out. So
yep.
It's very interesting to see. So it looks like...
Yeah, and these pummelers really just going to keep on coming in, keep on attacking.
Brawlers.
Yeah, brawlers, sorry, not pummelers. Yeah,
that's a very push card. It's effectively a 2-mana 4/3 with trample, which is very impressive.
Yeah, and we see that Andrew's not spent any energy so far on the Long Tusk Cub. And that, I think, is because he recognises that investing long-term resources into his creatures is just not going to work against a deck that's got stasis snares and reflector mages and things like that.
Okay. So it looks like Vance just recognised that Cub's not going to be doing much for him this game.
Yeah.
And is quite happy to just get in for 4 damage and trade that Cub away.
Yeah.
So trading a Cub for 4 damage.
Yeah. And here we've got a bristling Hydra come down for Andrew, which is a really...
pretty buff guy.
Yeah, kind of the top end of this, of most builds of the energy deck. Certainly it's the top end of the aggressive plan of the red-green pummeler deck. And this is a really effective card against decks that want to try and remove your creatures.
Wow, so looks like, yeah, JP just he couldn't afford to attack the Chandra there.
Yeah.
He was just facing too much damage. It was lethal damage, in fact.
12 on the crackback.
Yeah.
And here I got a Lanthu Hellion, which is going to let Andrew attack in for another 4. So he's attacking for 16 this turn. Oh my gosh. And he just slams a Verdurous Gearhulk, which is going to take that up to attacking for 20. So even with that Gideon emblem, JP's creatures are just far too small.
And of course, this is already a 4/4 with haste.
Yeah.
And now he gets to distribute damage. I think cleverly putting those onto the threats that are going to have trample this turn, so that the damage is definitely.
Yeah, and he's also just spreading everything out. I think, which again is thinking about Reflector Mage and thinking about Stasis Snare. He doesn't want to invest resources into one creature. He's not looking to form Voltron. He's looking to go as wide as possible and to have each of his threats valuable enough that removing one does not cripple his game plan.
Yeah. So well played by Andrew Vance there.
Yeah. So he's going to take down game 1.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll have a look at sideboards now as well. So quick look. So Andrew Vance, he's looking at 2 Pianolars. He's got 2 Pianolars, the Lantha Helion, Arlen Cord, Missile Vital Force, Galvanic Bombardment, and Blossom Defenses, Root Out, and Natural State. So how do these cards match up against JP's main board?
So I think that...
I should also note, so these two players they know each other. I wouldn't be surprised if they know what's in their main decks as well. So.
Yeah. So they probably have at least discussed a little bit what they're doing. Yep. So we can already see, I think, JP is starting to take out some of those scrap heap scavengers. They're not really going to be doing what he wants in this matchup. Is potentially kind of happy with how his deck is lined up. Although I think potentially he might be looking at some of those planeswalkers, just because they're things that are hard for JP to interact with profitably.
Right. And you know, Arlen Cord's flip side does basically have a removal spell attached to it. Yeah. And putting creatures on the board is not a horrible thing to do here either. Especially when you've got cards like the Verdurous Gearhulk.
Yeah, definitely.
Which can just like make those creatures bigger.
And the JP's creatures that, on average, are small enough that it's not really going to matter how big Vance's creatures are. Okay. Certainly, they basically are looking to be able to beat a 2/2 or a 3/3. And if he's got most of his board that can beat 2/2s, then they'll be happy with that.
Okay.
So I think I don't expect Andrew to be changing too much. Okay. Just maybe thinking about some of those planeswalkers.
So does JP play Stasis Snare?
Yes, he does. He's got 3 Stasis Snares.
Natural State might be an option here.
I think that it's a consideration, but I don't think I would bring it in personally.
Okay.
Just because you really want all of your cards to be presenting a direct threat that JP needs to find a way to answer,
right,
or to deal with a particular threat or answer that JP is presenting. And I don't think that Natural State, what you're doing is you're putting a card in your deck that is only good if your opponent has drawn a single card.
Right.
one that there are only 3 of
Mm-hmm.
in the main deck, and he doesn't have any in the sideboard, so there will only be 3 stasis as in JP's deck. And
yeah, I mean, there's the Copter as well, but again,
Copter as well, but
I guess Andrew does present so many threats that having one blind player stasis.
Andrew really isn't looking to deal with anything that JP plays except for Avacyn. Really, that's the thing that just completely brick walls him.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and let's look at JP's sideboard now.
Yep. Immolating Glare is a good card. I believe it is target creature sacrifices an attacking creature.
I think it's destroy target attacking
Destroy target attacking creature, right.
Yeah.
So this is a very good card. Would be quite good against Andrew. Immolating Glare also quite powerful against the red-green Pummeler decks because it gets around the hexproof granted by Blossoming Defense. So that's probably why it is in the sideboard.
Okay, no, this one does
No,
I think Blessed Alliance is
my
the
mistake.
card you're talking about here. Yeah.
Yes, so but Immolating Glare is still going to be great at destroying these things like the Sky Sovereign and just the big things that are going to be coming in from Vance's side of the board. Certainly we're not talking about Ceremonious Rejection or anything. Declaration in Stone is something that he could be thinking about. And if he suspects that Vance is going to be bringing in a bunch of Planeswalkers, then the Negates is something.
Sound pretty good there,
yeah.
Fumigate?
Yeah.
Do you think it's fast enough? Too slow? 5 mana?
Fumigate's probably good enough. I think that if JP starts by playing, say, a couple of Thraben Inspectors into a Copter, and then goes turn 5 Fumigate, and then can play out some more creatures and immediately be attacking with Copters, I think that's a very powerful game plan that could be quite beneficial for him.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I can see that, and the life gain you get from that is pretty significant too.
Yeah.
Especially when you're not the aggro deck.
Yeah. Definitely.
All right.
So yeah, I think that we'll probably see both of these players kind of settle more into the roles of control and aggro. After that game 1, the decks are lined up so that it's clear to see which is which.
Right. Okay. So we'll see. Like both decks are already quite mid-rangey. And they've both got tools to grind. The Tireless Trackers in Vance's deck, and just like the sort of Planeswalker and instant, like the Flash suite that John.
So I think Vance is going to be moving towards things that can do both roles, like Almond Cord, which can keep an aggression going. Tireless Tracker, as we said, is a very good card. Can attack and then can generate advantage as the game goes on. And JP is going to be looking to find things that deal with the very potent threats that Vance is presenting.
Yeah. Okay. Alright, so players drawing the opening hands. So Andrew's throwing it back again, so few reasons that could be bad land, but I guess he's also looking for some threats to play early and pressure JP's life total as soon as he can.
Yep.
Okay.
I think Vance is probably fine with this. The mulligan of the deck, from what I can see, I would imagine that it would mulligan okay.
Yep.
Compared to some other decks. It certainly mulligans much better than the Pummeler deck. I was talking with Virginia that is a deck that comes in 2 halves. And you need to have both halves in your hand. Otherwise, you're not going to do anything.
Yep.
This one, all you need is land and spells to cast them.
Yeah. Yeah, so it is interesting, because one thing I've sort of liked about those energy decks is that you kind of cheat on cards with the energy. So your energy becomes a combat trick.
Yeah.
It looks like Andrew's decided, why not just ditch the actual physical card combat tricks and just use the energy as the combat tricks. So it's a nice. I think it's a nice evolution of the deck here.
Yeah.
It's got.
Yeah, energy's been a really interesting mechanic, and we'll see. It'd be interesting to see how it plays out with the next set in the Kaladesh block, Aether Revolt.
Yep.
And also just seeing how it becomes felt throughout its lifetime in Standard, because it is very strong. It has some very strong and powerful applications, but it is only present in this, and energy cards need energy.
Yep.
And it's what we call a linear mechanic. It's parasitic as well, so it needs to have the resource to work.
Yep.
So this is a reason why when they design the cards, they have every card that uses energy in the set also has a way of generating it.
Yeah.
And they work very well together. And I think that really is the reason that Kaladesh has had such an impact on the standard format, is the power level of the energy cards, and the fact that if you're playing energy cards, you want to be playing a lot of them.
Right.
So see, Smuggler's Copter getting in here for Andrew. Both players have got their copters going.
Let's have a look at that card. So, is this deck doing a bit more for either of these decks? Is any deck?
I think that Copter is just such a powerful card that it really works in any shell that you put it in. As long as you've got creatures to crew it, it's good. So you see, Andrew is falling behind a little bit.
It's like he's missed a land drop.
Yeah. JP's going to keep these clues going and keep the beats coming. Yeah, so...
And getting that card selection. And that looks like he just pulled a Fumigate there. So yeah, he has opted for it. I think he's just seen that he's ahead.
He's just started it.
Pitch it immediately.
Well, he's not really that interested in blowing up 3 of his creatures and none of Andrew's at this point, which seems like a good play. So Andrew here, he finds an Attune with Ether. That's not going to net him a mana this turn, but it's going to let him continue to develop his board. But he's not in a good way.
Yeah. And we didn't really see anything in his deck that gets him back from this.
Yeah, so he's had to discard that Chandra. Not that Chandra would be a good draw here, it would just die quite quickly.
I think one of his ways back is perhaps something like Incendiary, Harness Lightning, specifically Harness Lightning.
Yep. If he can...
Take that Copter out?
Yeah. I think taking the Copter out is obviously the first step to winning. But continuing to draw creatures is quite important. He's going to not play anything this turn.
Ooh, that Everson's going to make Harness Lightning a bit difficult. Okay.
So I know Vance could have played a Long Toss Cub there that was bounced with the Reflector Mage.
Ooh.
But he's going to Galvanic Bombardment that, and then he's going to Galvanic Bombardment again to do the 3 damage.
This will probably prompt the Everson.
Yeah, it's going to prompt the Everson.
Okay.
Yeah.
And looks like Vance is enough. Okay. Wow.
He is had enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
he just fell behind a little bit.
Yeah. Mulligan missing land drops.
Yeah. That's... and that is the type of game that Smuggler's Copter can sometimes get you back from. He was just a little bit too far behind, and JP had one of those draws where he had his own Smuggler's Copter.
Yep.
Smuggler's Copter just does a lot of damage very quickly.
Yep.
And blank the removal spells.
So yeah, interesting. I think we just got a peek at JP's sideboard there. It looks like he has taken the Toolcraft Exemplar out, which is what I expected, because that is obviously a much more aggressive card. Didn't really matter this time. He still had the role of aggressor, and the way the card sort of came out that way.
Yeah, no. So he's running 2 Toolcraft Exemplar in the main deck.
Yep.
And yeah, that card is card that some people have been surprised hasn't seen so much play. It is very powerful if you can get enough artifacts in your deck. Yeah.
I mean, JP's main board has I think like 7 ways to turn that on immediately. 4 Tribe Inspectors, 4 Copters, and then 3 Scrapheap Scroungers. So it's probably going to be a 3-2 a lot of the time. When he plays it. But
yeah, so I think he's taken out the Scroungers, and he's also taken out those Exemplars just to, a concession to the fact that his creatures just don't match up that well against Vance's, and he needs other ways of dealing with those.
But and of course, like, advantages of building these kind of mid-range decks is that you can sort of change gears quite readily. You don't need to find some immediate win con. You've kind of got the tools to start beating down if that's what you need to be doing.
Yeah.
JP recognizing that in that game and just pouncing.
Definitely.
Okay, so looks like the players didn't really change their sideboards.
I don't expect much change between games 2 and 3.
I think they've worked out what they were.
I think that's true basically for most of the decks in the current standard format.
Yeah. Not too much changes on the play.
Yeah. There's not much. Obviously, certain decks are favoured on a player draw or really want to be on the player draw, but there's not many decks that want to be configured differently, basically.
Okay. So, yeah. Trusty Throbbing Inspector on turn 1.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, awkwardly having a tap line there. So he's going to go and find one of those 2 colors and then play the untapped.
Yeah.
Game Trail, I believe.
Revealing the land that he finds, I'm sure, to keep it untapped. Yeah.
Goes for a forest. Okay, so again, not a particularly fast start, but
no. Well, I think the red-green energy deck normally doesn't get going until turn 2. It's not the type of aggro deck where you have a lot of 1-drops.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I can't see any 1-drops in his list. He's mainly aiming to play some
like brawlers, Latin aliens, etc. Yeah.
He's aiming to slam some 2-drops and 3-drops and 4-drops that are just bigger than some of the other aggressive decks in the format. So there are some red-white decks, the vehicles decks. Those have generally quite small creatures, which means that they're not good at slowing down and blocking.
Mm-hmm.
Their offense is definitely in their vehicles, which can make them quite vulnerable to something like this, which just has generally big creatures.
Okay, so JP perhaps considering whether it's worth getting in there or leaving up a blocker for a card like Blasphemy Hellion. It looks like he's decided blocking is more important.
Yeah. I think he's probably identified that the hand that he's got at the moment might not be as aggressively minded as the other one.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew is not stumbling on mana. He's may or may not have more creatures or threats. Looks like he's going to be playing some now, but JP's identified that if he goes aggressive now, then Andrew's going to win that battle.
Yeah,
Andrew's going to be able to have enough advantage to get there.
And speak of the devil, Blasphemy Hellion is the play, and looks like Andrew's quite happy to make a trade for the copter. To be honest, I would be too.
Yeah. No. Well, JP's just decided to take his medicine.
Mm-hmm. Does have some reasonable follow-ups here.
Yeah, so I think I can see a Spell Queller in his hand.
Mm-hmm. Which, if I was JP, I'd be tempted to keep that up for the next turn.
I think he's looking for a land drop, though.
I think he's got one in hand. There's another port town, I believe.
Alright.
So he might be looking for an untapped source.
Yeah. So he's going to discard that Smuggler's Copter.
Mm-hmm. He doesn't play the land. Maybe he didn't have one. Certainly had a land in hand.
Yeah, he's just going to pass the turn. I think he's leaving up a Spell Queller. He might also have a Stasis Snare in hand, but I don't think he does.
Right. It looks like he didn't have the land, sorry. It must have been a port town.
So I think he's got an Avacyn, a Throbbing Inspector, a Selfless Spirit, and a Spell Queller. So Andrew's got to know that there's something potential for a Spell Queller here. Yeah. And JP's going to think about that.
He's happy to let that resolve.
He's going to let that one resolve, hoping that Vance plays something else. But Vance isn't going to play anything else. So JP's going to go, okay, I'm going to crack a clue and attempt to hit my land drop.
Mm-hmm. So I can do my more powerful things later in the game.
Yeah. And he finds 2 lands on the top of his deck.
One of them's untapped. So, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, you could play tap land here, keep the Spell Queller.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing he's pretty tempted to try to get that Selfless Spirit down as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And of course, the downside of Blasphemy Hellion is that you do need to keep feeding it energy or it does die. So, incredibly efficiently costed, 3 mana, 4/4. It's fantastic with haste, even better.
It's like the sandworms of June. You must keep feeding it, otherwise it eats you.
Right, and we find another inspector. So yeah, this copter's doing work.
Yeah, so I think JP's decided that he's quite close to being able to cast an Avacyn. He just needs to get one more untapped step. And so I think he's trying to get some things on the board to kind of maximize the value of that Avacyn, and he wants to keep drawing cards. He's not really under a lot of pressure at the moment. It's just that Blasphemy Hellion, and he does, want to be able to respond to anything that Andrew does.
Okay. And just protecting his life total there. If Andrew has no way to make energy this turn, that Left-Wing Hellion just dies on its own. And it looks like it's probably going to happen unless he's got an attuned favor here. So Andrew might be tempted to tick up to try to find that tune.
Yep. Finds another Chandra.
Okay.
So it's just going to deal 3 damage to
should
JP.
be exiled.
Yep. JP draws.
So, not the worst outcome. He does have a Planeswalker on the board.
Yeah, although that Chandra is, again, vulnerable to Smuggler's Copter.
Yeah,
the card.
One of the reasons I think it's not getting played.
yeah. I think Copter really has slowed down, or reduced the amount of Planeswalkers played in Standard, given that it is so easy to mount a defense. Even if your opponent has cleared your board of all active creatures, there's still the very real danger of another one coming down and activating a Copter that's just been lying around for a bit.
So yeah, the vehicles do give creatures pseudo haste.
Yeah.
Okay, so Andrew had a good start, but he's might kind of be out of gas here.
Yeah, so JP deciding here what to discard. I think he drew a Plains, which he'd be quite happy to see. That means that he can next turn get his Avacyn while also leaving up Spellcaller this turn. So he did have a tap source in his hand, I believe. Yeah, that Prairie Stream. And so this just lets him keep up both.
Yep. So Andrew again, just looking for cards, so he himself is just looking for more things to do here.
Yeah. And so he's going to find that Long Tusk Cub.
Fortunately, no energy to really feed it here. And that's going to get Spellcaller.
Yeah, I think JP's going to try and remove the Spellcaller, but yeah, this is an interesting trick here, is that if Andrew had cast Harnessed Lightning on the Spellcaller in response to the Exile trigger, then JP would have been very happy about that. Because the way that works is the Spellcaller dies, then it leaving the battlefield trigger goes on the stack.
I think they've put it all into one ability now.
No, not for Spellcaller.
Really?
Spellcaller is still formatted. It is 2 different abilities.
Wow,
Yeah, so it is formatted the same way as the old Oblivion Ring. So if Andrew had cast the Harnessed Lightning before the Spellcaller
then he just
exiled the one, then it would have been exiled forever. And I think that JP probably would have not sacrificed the Selfless Spirit in that case.
Yeah.
He would have been very happy with that exchange.
Okay.
So yeah, that's a trick. Some people have tried to abuse that instant with stuff like Eldrazi Displacer.
That's right, yeah. Activating twice.
Yep.
Yep.
But it's a little bit too clunky, and we haven't really seen that much.
Okay.
We've got a Verdurous Gearhulk here.
So let's see, he's gonna he just has to put them all in there.
Yeah,
so
he doesn't really have much choice.
He could have activated Crude in response to the end of the battlefield and put the counters in the Copter.
Yeah, so he's gonna continue doing that, and here we see the Avacyn, which JP really has been building up to all game. And maneuvering himself, and
Andrew's got a response.
He does, but he's going to give a Blossoming Defense on that Copter.
Before blocks, so it looks like he just wants to get the damage in. Okay.
Yeah, well, they just bounce off each other, because the Avacyn is indestructible.
Right, okay. That was fun, right? Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So Vance there, just keeping the Copter alive and around. And I don't think that the Blossoming Defense not really going to be doing much in this game, because JP's Copter is going to be attacking, and Vance really wants to find some other form of removal. Yeah. And the Copter's a way of doing that.
And it looks like JP's hand's just kind of stacked right now. He's got Stasis Snare, Reflector Mage, which, ouch.
Yeah,
and
that's a good
one. I think
one.
he's also got a Blessed Alliance in his hand as well, so... looks like JP has turned the corner, as they say.
Yep. Yeah, I think Yeah, Vance shows the hand, and he really was not able to cope with those first few, the Lathnu Hellion.
Sort of ran out of gas. Yep.
Yeah. And that's the thing, you need to keep feeding, you need to have those cards to keep generating energy to keep it around. It is a very powerful card, but it is a very real downside.
Very demanding.
And JP, he played towards being able to jam an Avacyn, and he kept up Spell Queller when he needed to, and cracked the clues he had from his Throven Inspectors when he didn't find any good targets, recognizing that the Spell Queller was going to be much more powerful if he used it, all of its abilities, instead of just as a 2/3 flash flyer, which sometimes you have to do, but he recognized that the extra value was quite important.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, well played, JP. So yeah, he's put himself into a pretty good spot. He'll be 3-1 now.
He should be able to intentionally draw into the top 8.
Vance could be a bit tighter, and come down to breakers or something like that.
We've only got we only had 2 undefeated players at the beginning of this round. There was Dylan and I can't remember who else. But Dylan, who
was Simon Lundberg,
right? Yep. So Dylan, who we saw in the last match, and Simon, who has also had quite a bit of success so far in this tournament series, and I expect that they've probably intentionally drawn. And yes, I suspect that we will be seeing JP in the top 8.
Yep. Okay, so
best of luck to Vance getting there.
Yeah. Okay, so fantastic. Thanks, Jacob.
No worries.
That's great. So we will take another break and be back with round 5 of the Paragon Games Ruby Open.